more that you start taking responsibility for the experiences that you're having, the more freedom you start to experience. This is one of the things we're all wanting in life. We want to be able to experience a level of freedom to express joy, happiness, pleasure. But in most cases, what we're doing, because if we're not in a state of responsibility, if we're not acting from a place of responsibility, we're acting from a place of a lack of responsibility, and usually instead of freedom, we're experiencing license. License is where we're just do whatever we want, whether it hurts us or somebody else, whether we're aware that we're hurting ourselves or other people or not. There's a big difference between freedom and license. Freedom is based on responsibility, and responsibility is guided by self-love. Whereas license is choice without self-control. And that self-control, that lack of self-control, is guided by self-hate. Self-hate. And that self-hate can masquerade as self-love, when in reality it's actually, these low-quality ways that you feel about yourself. And it will manifest in ways where it might come across as seeming like it's good for you, when in reality it's not. Because there's this part we call the ego, part of our consciousness. Now, there's two different definitions for ego, main definitions. There's the Eastern philosophy, which is, it's the fear mind. It's the part of you that creates the illusion of that there is no love, when in reality love is always present. All right? So it's the part that cuts you off from that true reality of love. Whereas the ego, as discussed in Western psychology, they would suggest, they define it as your personality, your characteristics, okay? There's two different ways of looking at it. When I say ego, I'm talking from the perspective of the fear mind. If you've ever heard an Eastern philosophy, such as Buddhism, talk about something like the illusion, that this level of reality is an illusion, first you have to get perspective, because that's what that metaphysical principle is asking for you to get perspective. But perspective that this level of reality is not real or significant, but it's asking you to get perspective on the difference between fear and love. Because one of those states is real, one of those states is false, the illusion. So when they talk about the illusion, the great illusion, the illusion is fear. Because fear literally creates this belief or this illusion that love is not present, when in reality love is always present. It just cuts us off from seeing that reality. Okay? So the metaphysical principle that this is an illusion, they're talking about fear as being the illusion, not this level of reality. This reality is real to our five senses. This reality is real to the part of us that's witnessing, evidencing this reality and experiencing this through incarnation. All right? It's very real. It's the fear that's being suggested is the illusion. Does that make sense? Really important when we're going deep into this subject, because there will be resistances that come up because of those subpersonalities, those ego states, and we want to be able to register the difference in how we're feeling. We want to be able to, okay, this is fear right now. And this is fear a second ago was trying to masquerade itself as love. So basically the fear mind will learn everything you learn. Even all the great stuff that you've learned from your spiritual practice, your spiritual development, everything that you learn in these teachings, it learns too. And it's clever. It is super clever. It will then use that stuff to hide behind spirituality. If you've ever heard somebody say something like, Spirit told me to do it. It's like, no, that's there. If you experienced pain because their spirit told you to do something, that's usually their ego masquerading itself as a grand spiritual idea of spirits or guidance. Does that make any sense? This is usually what the fear mind will do. It'll learn everything you learn, and where you will use those ideas and principles in loving ways, it will find ways to keep you separate from everyone around you, because as long as you feel separate, then you will be in a state of fear.
This is scary.
This is reality, though. All right? When it's put to you in this way, hopefully it starts to make sense of things that didn't make sense before, or hopefully it starts showing you a pathway that you have that maybe in the past where you felt, I don't know what to do with this. Because this is the problem with fear. How many times, maybe especially from the truth-seeking movement, what we used to call the conspiracy sort of reality or conspiracy theory, when maybe people land a new conspiracy theory on your doorstep, they just come to you and it's like they overshare all this information and then they walk off. And it's just like, now you're just feeling helpless, you're feeling out of control, you're feeling like this just doesn't feel good because they didn't give you a solution. They literally just dropped all this fear in your lap and they walked away without giving you a solution. That's horrible. But that's what's happened to us most of our lives. Because we don't have a lot of role models who really have answers for us. Maybe you've gone to workshops or talks in the past, and during the Q&A, you ask a question, and maybe the person answering the question for you is giving you this roundabout information because maybe they're struggling themselves to have an answer that is going to help you. So in a lot of times when we look away from something that's creating fear, we look away because we don't know what to do. And there is no genuine spiritual teaching that then tells us not to look. But that's sort of the thing. Like in the law of attraction circles, the teaching is not to look at darkness. It's just the ego will twist it. The ego will make us think, I shouldn't look at headlines, or other negative stuff in the press because then I'm going to add energy to it. Where my attention goes, energy flows. No, the ego is twisted spiritual knowledge for its own purpose. If you don't look, if you don't have a solution, come up with a solution with higher caliber thinking, it makes you think you're helpless around the situation. It makes you think that there's nothing you can do. You're just one person. The ego is twisting really good spiritual knowledge for the purpose of making you feel this way, out of control and etc. So what genuine spiritual teachings are asking you is to, when the darkness emerges, for you to look with love. Now, what does that look like exactly? I mean, we're going to go more into this tomorrow because I want to get back into the technique side of this. But I'll just, sort of tie this up a little bit. When we see darkness in the world, in a lot of cases, anything that the universe brings to you in that way, what it's asking you is, from some level of your development, it's asking you to exercise your spiritual muscles, your psychic muscles, your emotional muscles. What does that look like? That looks like compassion, kindness, mercy, love, forgiveness. The last group that I had here, one of the women asked, like minutes before they were all to go back out the door into the world, 1 o'clock the next day, she said, okay, I am feeling so safe right now. I'm feeling like, we've had this powerful recalibration. Feels like I've, gone to have a massage and I've just had all my tissues, deeply massaged, and all that energy of stress and anxiety kind of just moved out of my system. I'm feeling so safe, so relaxed. What's the aftercare plan? Okay? What do I do when I go home? Because I want to be able to continue to feel this way. And I said to her, well, what's happened in most cases when we feel that way, where we feel safe, we've actually allowed ourselves to receive. We've allowed ourselves to receive, let's say, energy as an example. So if you go to a Reiki practitioner and that Reiki practitioner moves energy about, builds some energy, clears energy, you're probably going to feel like you've received. If you surrender, if you trust the situation, if you trust the person, you'll be able to surrender and you'll be able to get yourself into a receiving mode. Okay? If you enter a receiving mode, you are going to receive, whether it's energy, financial support, emotional support. Does that not make sense? Now, if you're feeling like you've received, in a lot of cases, you're actually in a state where you can now give. What can you give straight away? You can give what the universe is really asking you to give. It's asking you to give unconditional love in the form of understanding, forgiveness, compassion, kindness, mercy, gratitude. It's asking you to give what is within all of us. We've trained to be compassionate and kind in easy situations. The universe is asking us to flex those muscles, those emotional, mental, spiritual, psychic muscles in moments where it's most needed.